Hello, lovely people. How are you? Hope you're observing all precautions and protocols and taking good care of yourself, your friends, family, and people around you. That is the need of the hour. Welcome to episode 12 of Know the Happiness How with Winko Chow. Here I am once again, your host, Wing Commander Satyendra Chauhan, aka Winko Chow, the resilient lifestyle strategy coach from Bangalore, India. And I have an exciting guest today, a very impressive one, and you will learn that during the course of our conversation. Our guest today is host of a new podcast, Out of the Rabbit Hole from Stress to Bliss. Located in central New Jersey, she has an MA in Health Arts and Sciences. She is a holistic nurse, specializes in integrative complementary functional medicine. She's seasoned with diverse clinical experience, including 20 years in the critical care of ICUs. A native of Philippines, she's also a traditional Filipino Hilot, an indigenous health practitioner, a health coach, a life health coach and advocate, an author and speaker on mind body wellness, and her immersion of a family practice in indigenous medicine in the Philippines. She powerfully blends traditional Filipino healing process with traditional medicine and quantum energy medicine. So she's come a full circle now, starting from her traditional healing practices. She is now in the adult care. Yes, she's looking after senior and adult patients and suffering from dementia in the community nursing. And she's also in the public health nursing, working on all these elderly patients. So, ladies and gentlemen, with not much ado, I give you Director of Nursing at Buckingham Place, sorry, Adult Daycare Center and Community Outreach and Home Care from Central New Jersey, US, Grace Asagra. Welcome to Know the Happiness How with Winko Chow. Have I missed out anything?
No, thank you so much. That was very good introduction. And I'm very pleased and honored to be in your podcast. And I do welcome the audience as well. And again, it's a beautiful moment that I can share this space with you.
All right. And as such, I have taken you to Buckingham Palace. So, I've
Yes,
lifted you up there.
I wouldn't mind them consulting on me.
Yes, I know. And actually, it would be their honor too, like it is mine to have you here on my show and have you, come into our lives. So many of us are so blessed to know you actually. So, so as I always tell my listeners and viewers and audience that Happiness How with Finko Chow is a show which airs meaningful conversations to bring smile on the faces, a sparkle in the eyes, and a little cheer to lighten up the moods of young executives, entrepreneurs, and professionals who are working in very high pressure jobs and living independent, alone, and sometimes single in the cities. They have lots of challenges, countering negativity, the workplace politics, the other environmental challenges. So what we do here is try and talk about the why and what of the resilience at workplace and try and regain and maybe help them out to understand what is sustainable happiness. And so here we are. So what better way than starting by asking you what energizes you? There is so much of energy, Grace, and we all keep wondering that you have such a long day, and at the end of the day, also there is that big cheer and that nice little giggle behind that voice. So, what is that secret?
Um, as far as my childhood, I can remember that I'm I always want to move and I will always want to be active.
Mhm.
So I remember back in the Philippines that early morning, before the sun is up, because that we're in the hot weather zone. So
Mhm.
most of us get up before the sun is up. We'll go for a quick run, or
Mm.
could be a long run, and we just keep running, and our goal is to go to the beach.
Mm.
Because I live like in an urban area, rural, so it's a
Mhm.
combination of rural and
Mhm.
urban. We call
Mhm.
it urban.
Mhm.
And we keep running to the beach. It's like the beach is the prize. And when we reach there, then we do a quick dive and a quick swim. And after that, then we go to this little hut where we could have a little piece of bread or sweet potato with the rice coffee. So then from there, that's when we take a little jeepney and then go to work. So it's like that became a habit every day of doing something, of moving. And I believe that's where my energy comes from, that habit of being physical and setting myself for the day.
Oh, and you do that now as well?
Yes, but
Oh.
now I don't run to the beach. And I remember again when I first arrived in New York in 1985, I still took that habit with me, and I was running outside on the streets in New York, in the Bronx. And so it wasn't that exciting because there was no beach as a goal, because you keep running and you're hot, you're physically hot and sweating.
Mhm.
So, but then eventually, I just I just do right now, I do some stretches, I do my knees exercise and my ankle. So, just still doing something, and there's a lot of machines also that you could have at home. So I do that as well. And being physical for me is the main thing to keep your energy and use it as a resilient habit. And one more thing that I remember bringing to from the Philippines to United States is I brought my elastic. It's like that stretch band that
Mhm.
you put on the handle of the door.
Mhm.
So those it's not that I think United States had nothing, but I know that I don't know where I'm going exactly in terms of stores, so I better
Mhm.
bring my little equipment. Yeah.
Wow. So I'm very sure there is little more to that secret. And then yes, and eventually we will learn it as we move further into the course of our conversation. So you said you migrated to United States in 1985. How has the journey been? Thriving in ICU, migrating to US, a quantum nurse, managing caregivers, and now starting out as a podcaster. Very
It,
exciting. We
yeah.
would want to know a little more.
Yes, it's been exciting, fantastic, and at the beginning, you don't know exactly how. That's on my journey. I didn't fully imagine that I'm going to be a podcaster now. Although I know that I like to always make a difference, always do something that I like
Mhm.
in terms of health for others and health for myself, that through helping me and being conscious of everything that I do, that's something that I can impart. So it's been a difficult thing when I first landed. Actually, I was looking at all the buildings in in the Bronx. So that's where my recruiter had a housing there, and we were around ten Filipino nurses. And what they do is they house you with a Filipino home. And this Filipino home were cramped in the house of maybe that could be just a 4-bedroom house. But in each room, there are like at least two nurses. So with that, I'm looking, and the buildings in New York in that area, for me, it looks like bird houses. So I said, oh dear, this isn't what I see in the movies. So I'm like, I thought I'm going to go to a little bit more countryside of the part in New York. And but here I am like living in one of those bird houses, because that's how the buildings in New York, in apartment buildings. Nevertheless, at least we were with other Filipinos. And be, so it was kind of like a mixed feelings. Like I'm happy that I can now begin a new life with the intention that I could help my family in the Philippines, because that's what most Filipinos nurses think of, is why they go out of the country, is to help their family. But at the same time, I said, oh, this is too far away from home. Then you meet all different I met all different people from different countries. And again, New York is like a melting city of people from all over the world. And eventually I learned that in New York, if you're looking for something that might represent any country in the world, New York is the place.
Mhm. All right. So now, tell me how challenging were the hospital corridors in terms of your profession, nursing. I've had a doctor on my show, a pharmacist on my show, and especially the present times also are very challenging. So I know now you're in a different space altogether, but when you started out, like I said, working at the critical care and in the hospitals, having moved from a different cultural background to a place with good greener pastures, although like it I don't know whether you would want to call it a bird home or a pigeon hole, but then how challenging was the work environment, how
Well,
challenging it is.
it's challenging because, okay, I have to learn the culture in the environment, such as now working with all people from different background, and not just their background educationally, because not all are nurses. Of course, they're doctors, but there's wider, more background of educational background and training in health, right? Because then with that challenge also of knowing, because even if we're all health professionals, we still bring our personal background from home. So I have to learn that ways of communicating. I remember they would always tell us, don't speak in your language because there are other people who don't understand you. But then I notice other people are speaking in their language and no one tells them not to speak in their language. So that's like,
uh,
are they kind of like choosing which language? So that's one, right? And then at the time, we were, most of us, at least in my group, we were like contractual nurses. So we weren't really hired by the hospital directly. We were hired through an agency. So there's a difference with that, because then you start talking with nurses who are direct hired. Now you start talking about the difference of your pay, the difference of your benefits, and benefits including health benefits, vacation. So you start knowing these things. And then every now and then again, you feel like, oh, she can be off and she gets paid. and then we cannot be off, and we work longer hours than them. So all these things are just like in your head, and you're like, and, you know, and eventually, thankfully, most of us did not let it affect our work, the quality of our work. Although that was like the beginning of you start thinking that you could make some changes after a year, because your contract, usually our contract is a year or two. Okay, then when it comes to knowing the names of the food, the vegetables, we had to go like on our own in the supermarket and learn those little things that are important to carry a conversation with either the doctors, the American doctors, or also the patients. And those are the difficult things. And another difficulty is that when we're used in the Philippines to kind of like have more interaction with the doctors and other nurses without much, let's say, so many protocols on not to, rather than, yeah, and of course, I don't know about in India, but there's so much family involvement in the Philippines, the care, the direct care.
Yes.
Like we don't mind the families to be there. In United States, when I first arrived, there was there's a lot of restrictions on the visiting hours and the family involvement, because what they are afraid of is being sued. Okay, so for me, those are all the new things. And to top of that is the feeling that you're so far away from home. So I came to United States in New York that I didn't really have a family. Others, maybe when they come, they stay with their family. So that was also difficult. And when it comes to that too, when you keep learning all the things that you have to do,
Mm-hmm.
you can't also help, but there are some jealousies on if you're I guess because of the difficulty that some of us have been there, some of us just came, and other Filipino nurses and other foreign nurses have been in the workplace for a long time. So there's that seniority part. And eh, at least in my upbringing, you always have to respect the people who've been there before you. And you have to, it's always better to make friends with them rather than you pretend you know much. And I remember my best two friends when I first came who helped me a lot in my transition are two nurses aides.
Mm-hmm.
One was an Irish American nurse aide, and the other one is she's Puerto Rican American. And they're much older than me. So
Mm-hmm.
it seems like I found aunties, two aunts, or there could be my parents.
Okay.
And they were extremely helpful. So that was a big help in my transition. And I noticed that because I came from the Philippines, I attract or I was comfortable to be friends with people coming from another country right
Mm-hmm.
away.
All right.
Okay, because we have similar stories to tell. We have questions. We always say, hey, when did you come? Why did you come? How did you come? Do you have your family here? So it's kind of all about that feeling of you have some support, whether you are in a strange place, in a new work environment, or you've been there for a while.
All right. Very, very interesting. Uh, So I what comes to my mind is, from coming from Rurban, a place where you were running the early morning towards the beaches, to the melting, city like New York, and from the open greens and beaches to so-called bird home and pigeon holes, and from ought to not to. It has been really a remarkable journey for you. I'm very sure all those who are listening and would be watching it later would certainly want to connect. And there are so many nice lessons there, that once you come to a different place from a different culture, and especially if you are an Asian, then bro, I feel you have more connect, because your grounding and your culture teaches you so much of humility. Sometimes, yes, it can turn into the similar not to, but then at the end of the day, the energies that you exchange would certainly see you through. So, like what happened with Grace there. So now, tell me, and uh, how about, when did you, from critical care, when did you make this transition to a quantum nurse?
So I've been working in critical care for 20 years, right? And I really loved it. I was always talking or manifesting situations or attitudes and behavior, and they could see that I I practice holistic lifestyle, and that was really fulfilling because I remember when I would bring my food and they would see my food like in the morning for breakfast, and they'll see fruits and vegetables, and then the afternoon the same thing, that they see a lot of vegetables. Because you see, during my time in critical care, even if we have a dining area, there's not a lot of time to have a break to go there. So sometimes our food is out in the open in the nurse's station. Maybe now that might not be allowed anymore, but during my time, that was allowed, because now they have access to us anytime. And when the doctors come around or family come around, we're right there in the nurse's station to respond to any question or any request. So that was all. I really loved it. How I transitioned, I I might have really put it in my intention all the time that maybe someday I will do something different, because I've always combined anything that I work in nursing. You could always find me or find myself attending different classes in Ayurvedic medicine, in alternative medicine, complementary medicine. And it's not that they're fully new to me, because I've already been interested and had some training in the Philippines before I came. So that's always in my heart to do that. And the in some time in early 2000, when there was a lot more shortage, and before I know it, I was one of those that, and I was already a senior nurse at that time. So they had to downsize certain staff. So I was one of those that was eased out of
Mhm.
ICU.
Okay.
Then after that, but before that, I always thought that if that happens, I will never go back to hospital nursing, because I know it's very stressful, and there's just so much outside of hospital nursing, or I call it um, corporate nursing. There's so much outside that can be done.
Mhm.
But sometimes when you are in a situation that maybe you maybe have some doubt if you want to continue. You don't push yourself out because you get settled with income,
Mm-hmm.
with benefits, with
Mm-hmm.
the routine that you do, that eventually when the forces just happen that you're out of your comfort zone. So that's when I had to say, what can I do now? But definitely, I wasn't interested to go back to any hospital nursing. So I started with home nursing first because there is this young nurse who used to be an intern in ICU that I trained, and this young Latino nurse became close to me as I was training him. When I say close to me,
Mm-hmm.
none some of the nurses don't want to train him
Mm-hmm.
because he's an older student. I mean, so he wasn't like a young nurse. He was a young nurse, but still older from most nurses, right? No nurse student. So he now, at that point, he now holds a managerial position in a home care
Okay.
business. So when he learned that I'm out of the hospital, he was so quick to tell me, "You can work for me, work for me." And so I did work with him for 2 years, and he always tells everyone, "She used to be my supervisor. She trained me." She so I was delighted that he didn't forget about that, and he was really proud. So that pushed me out, to go out. And if I want to share to the audience that at that time, I feel like I was standing in the ocean looking at the horizon, and I wasn't sure how to go and where to go and what would I do. All I know is like this wide open space open for me, and if I step in the ocean, if I don't know how to swim, I could sink. So it's both a scary feeling of transitioning from something that you have done for many years, and to now say, what kind of nursing will you be doing?
That's
But there's always that intuition in you. So you always have to be out there with that intuition, that challenge. And because ICU wasn't easy either. Everyone's always there's someone's always looking on your back. So in any kind of work, there's always that challenge. However, that habit at home, whether it be a physical habit, mental habit of meditation and practice and prayer, whatever you do outside your work always comes handy at work,
absolutely.
especially good things.
And as long as you've got your whys clear, the hows will happen. The how happens from the forces around you, because I also believe that you are part of that force. So if your whys are very clear and you have been consistently in touch with those forces around you, they will make sure that your hows are taken care. So that's very interesting. Now I come to the next part. That is you turning an author. How did that happen? And
I'm
from there to a coach, to a proper wellness coach. So that is very, very, very interesting. I mean, I would love to know that.
Say it again, please. The question before the coach.
All right. So I said, uh, I believe you've turned an author also, and
Oh, okay.
yes,
Right.
from critical care to your journey to quantum nurse and those stresses and all those things. So what have you written about? Is it those stresses, or how they manifest, or how kind of handle those challenges, and all those people who come from, different places looking for greener pastures or looking for sustenance from different countries. It could be the Latin American countries, it could be the Asian countries, it could be far-flung countries. So what is all that you have authored about?
Oh, that book, The Healing Dance, A
Hmm.
Fusion of Massage and
I'm
Asian.
talking of that, yes.
I actually began writing that or contemplating on it when I was still in ICU. So that's always been my interest in holistic nursing. I guess in writing is always has always been there. And I, again, uh, I remember on my before I graduated in the College of Nursing, the father rector in our college was sick, and we want usually the father rector of the university will come to your graduation ceremony, but he got sick. And this is actually before the ceremony. We have what we call a pinning ceremony.
Mhm.
So because he got sick, I said I volunteered to write a letter to him. So I wrote a letter, and I believe it was so good that he, synchronicity, it made him feel better.
Oh,
That he came to our pinning ceremony, and he did mention, and he thanked the letter that we did, because when I wrote it, I didn't write that it was from me, but it was from our class.
okay.
So the letter was so nice. So that's the beginning of my interest in writing.
Mhm.
And then another little background before my book is, in college again, I have this friend who she was not very happy with her boyfriend.
Mhm.
So she wants to write some love letters to him or express himself. And I was her friend.
Mhm.
So I started writing for her. And I didn't even have any boyfriend, but in my letter, like as if I had a boyfriend already. But truthfully, I never did. I call myself a late bloomer. And that worked. Whatever I did worked. They did not break up, they reconciled, and they were happy in those years. Or
Mhm.
they didn't end up to be husband and wife, but during that time, they're happy. So then in ICU, because of all this sharing, even before ICU, and I was already a certified holistic registered nurse, because remember, I never stopped studying. And
Mhm.
that's how we met, because now we're studied be
Yes,
podcasters.
yes,
I don't
yes,
stop
yes.
studying. And that was like, so whatever challenge I had at work, a lot of the things at work, I believe I can control. Is, I can control how to respond to the challenge and difficulty. But at home or outside my work, whatever I decide to get involved in, that's within my control. So
Very true.
because of that, that's always in my agenda to, like, someday I like to put things in writing so that I can at least contribute to the collection of Filipino healing books, because there's not a lot.
Mhm.
All right. And in most indigenous culture, we don't have a lot of writing system. We have a writing system, but not to the point, but that most of us were conscious in making a book. And then, of course, my family. I thought, since I speak about my family a lot, let me make this book and make them proud of us as a family and as a culture. So I did that. And believing that, as you emphasize, that we're connected and there's always a source, there's always whatever you call that connection. In science they call it entanglement, but there's just so many terms, but it's just plainly saying that no man is an island. So I connected that story that in the Philippines we have the healing touch. we have what we call the Filipino Hilot. And in the Philippines, you don't usually go to doctors right away. During my time again, okay? Now maybe different now. When you're sick, you go to traditional healers, to indigenous people, either herbs, massage, bone manipulation, which right now, the part of what the chiropractor does, Filipino indigenous Hilot can do a lot of that alignment. So with that, so I have all of that in my understanding and in my practice, because when I before I came to United States, I was already immersed in my culture. So knowing what you have in your family, knowing what you have within your community, like your strengths,
Mhm.
wherever you go, whatever you do, you could, it's like your toolbox that you can pull. So I wanted to make that book as a toolbox. So I connected that to the Thai massage, which for me is very close to the Filipino Hilot.
Okay.
And then the Thai, the food and our food. So there's just so many things, and some of the cultural beliefs and habits.
That's so very interesting. So now all those you know people who are staying there or being there, remember that writing letters also for your friends can be a motivation to write a book tomorrow. And I'm very sure that the healing dance would certainly be a very interesting read. So do lay your hands on that. And also, let me tell you, Grace, you certainly, have done proud to people back home, and your own culture, and they must be really looking up to you. And all those young people who are out there and who generally would end up cribbing and about the stresses happening around, you all know there is one more part which can really lift you up. That is, if you are into reading, writing, and making good use of your time. Like Grace said, you could, have things outside your work. And certainly, if you have a hobby, like I call it a paying hobby, it's always better to pursue that. So, with all that happening, now we come to the other part of your journey, which you call uh, from rabbit hole to bliss. So, and now maybe you can think of maybe, on a lighter note, calling it a pigeonhole to a bliss. And also, so what is all that about?
For some reason, when two times that I in my life that I felt like I was deep down in a hole, I
Mhm.
always imagine that, when you're deep down in that hole, it, you look up and there's no one to pick you up. But I want to get out. So I remember one is when the first one was even before I stopped working in ICU, is when after 5 years of being together or being married, and I have a 5-year-old, and now we have to find a place to live. And I looked around in my area because my work before, I was lucky that I could just walk to the hospital in Princeton. But I live in that area where I didn't have to commute much. I'm always blessed like that. Everything that I do, I feel like I'm always blessed, even if I had some difficulty. So I can't get out. And I remember we have to pack our things because together we all have to move out of the house. But I kept looking and there was no place to live that a little bit more comfortable. With God's blessing, there's this older woman, a church woman, and actually she is a mother of a very famous African American figure. And so she said, I have a room, I have 2 rooms, and you can rent it. Why don't you stay there? And at that time, my mother was with me. And so it was so pleasant because it's again another mother, another lady, a wise lady who embraced us and said, moved with us, move with me, and until you find a good place for you. So for me, that was like, goodness, I remember crying and packing and crying and packing. And then, so that's like for me, a feeling of being in the rabbit hole, right? Then my other feeling of being in the rabbit hole is like, you're always in ICU with all the high tech world, but at the same time, your soul knows that there's so many alternative healing, complementary healing ways, especially your mindset. So I feel like, oh, there's always like that conflicting thing that you can't fully go out of your way to show them or to lead people that there's so much more than just being stuck with your certain Western medicine lifestyle. So there, when because I just didn't study holistic lifestyle, I lived it. I lived
Very
it,
true.
and I have the highest number of hours of accumulated sick time. And yet I can go on vacation because I have so many vacation time. And I rarely get sick. And if I get sick, I get better quick. But if you're right, if you don't know these things, you're right there again in the rabbit hole. And then if you don't expand your mind in your understanding and start learning to connect the dots of your life, then you'll really be stuck. So that, especially this pandemic time, I want to be able to express things, to share things, and help people, especially now I'm with the elders. And for me, I'm an elder. And so helping my co-elders is what I can say would be a good mission for the rest of my life. However, when you elders, we should always also help young people. And that's what you and I are doing.
Very true. And it's once again, let me tell you, you are expressing it so very well for everyone who's listening and would be watching it. And what you said is very true. People call it soul, people call it spirit, people call it energy. And believe me, uh, I don't know if you've had that intuition. You should always start relying on that. There is somebody who's always watching over you, and especially you, Grace. I'm telling you that. So do remember, you would never be in a rabbit hole ever again. So rest assured of that. So you were talking of stresses around, and while you were working in the ICU, and then when when there was downsizing happening, and people, although the gods turned out in some which way to help you out, but how difficult is it for a person who's come from outside, from a different culture, from a different country, than for somebody who is there? And you also said that you were a senior nurse already when all that was happening. So, how is it, and how did you kind of cope up with it at that time? And does it happen to quite many people who've come from various other cultures? It could be, other than America, I would call it, or other than US.
It is it is a fact that there's differences in pay rates. Okay.
Hmm.
And we have known that when you come from certain country, like usually European countries, you come to United States as a nurse, you can all be registered nurses from your countries. But
Okay.
when you come here, it doesn't mean that you will get the same pay rate for all new nurses. Okay, I'm not even talking about your difference pay rate for those who have been there already. So that
Mhm,
was already, so it's, I guess, I feel like it's not fair, but
mhm,
it's
got it.
something that I don't have a full control of those. So I have that in my mind, but I learned not to dwell on it so much because it's just gonna hurt me to keep thinking about it. That okay, I'm doing the same work. She's from Europe, I'm from Asia, and okay, I have less pay than her. Okay, but that's a fact. There's so many things that are truly happening. But I try to get out of that and just do my work the best way I can. And also like positional jobs, or if you want to be in the managerial position, that's something that I didn't really aspire much, but I know that others did. And sometimes in conversations they feel like they're not being given a chance because they are from another country, or maybe they have, oh, for whatever reason. Okay, and we are hear that a lot. However, I see also others who may be from another country that are in the managerial position.
Mhm,
One thing I learned is that when one knows what they want and they work for it, they work through the hardship, and sooner or later they'll be there. So I applaud the people who like, wow, she really knows what she wants. And if she's not happy with it, I had a boss before, and
mhm,
she really wants to be on the top level of nursing, and she was there with us in 5 years, and actually she was one of my worst bosses for me because she was giving me misery. But when she left, because she could not be at the top,
mhm,
she had a resistance, and so she just left. I said, wow, she really knows what she wanted, and if she cannot get it, she gave herself time, and that's it. She moved on. So same thing with us. And if if one doesn't expand your understanding that perhaps some of the things that you've been hearing from when you're a child went into your subconscious, and all the things especially that are not working for you anymore, and your beliefs that you have a lot of limitations, then that's not going to help. Okay, I'm realizing that more and more, that
mhm,
it isn't about sure that you're from another culture, that you cannot move on, or you, whatever is that limiting beliefs. It's just your beliefs now, and beliefs are crucial. It could either make you or break you. But what's most important is, what experiences do your beliefs bring to you? Because
excellent.
if those experiences are not auspicious, then we have to change our beliefs. And there's always a chance to change everything. I always say to my clients that when you wake up in the morning, or even now, yeah, the moment you always take a breath, that's a beginning, always a beginning. So take a breath, and when you wake up, there you go, you start all over again.
Excellent. Excellent. There's so much of learning there in what you just said. People listening, just underline certain words. We As a coach, I never ask my clients to look at their beliefs until they themselves want to. But you've said it very right that there could be a measure when you think that your beliefs are not auspicious. Very nicely put there. And your mindset, like Grace puts it, if you have it right, also you have to back all that with your what, that is what you want to achieve, what you're working at. So we are, if you're clear of your whys and whats, your house will keep working out for you. And I'm very sure, Grace, now from the time of the first rabbit hole experience to somebody coming out to help you to get you a temporary dwelling, you must have moved to a reasonably good place. And from being a nurse in the corridors who was, kind of laid out during downsizing, you must have moved places. Now you are director nursing. So how is this experience now? You did talk of the experience.
Trust me, sometimes I don't focus much on the title
Mhm.
because you know how it is in the workplace. They could give you so many beautiful titles.
Okay.
Yeah, but I'm very happy where I'm at because it's a small family business
All right.
where it's run by a father and a son, and
All right.
actually the father is slowly um, making his son manage it more,
Okay.
and and uh, believing again or trusting the process. Once you get out of that zone of being fearful,
Mhm.
but you will always still be fearful at some time, at some point, but you don't dwell on that. You just keep moving, and you trust the process and trust the energy, trust the source, trust that there's a divine
Very true.
person leading you. I ended up with you know, see, meeting the father and the son,
Hmm.
and I ended up meeting them. It was really from a network. So, when you have your own practice already, you start consciously networking with people. And it was funny because the first time I heard the word network, for me, my network is making friends. You go and socialize, you're invited to a party, then you network. You
Hmm.
belong to an organization, an association, you have a network. I didn't realize that there is what you call network meetings.
All right.
See, and that's why being out of ICU or being out of the hospital brings you to a whole lot more of knowing what the world is. And when you know the people like you and others who have their own practice, like, wow, there are so many intelligent, motivated people outside the corporate world, and they're doing fantastic job. So that's what so I went to that network, and that network, oh, so you really have to intentionally meet these people and introduce yourself.
All right.
Okay, so when I did that, then I get to really see how I can further myself and strengthen myself more in how what I will do. Because even if in your own work environment like us, we will have our own little staff and all that, we could still have that difficulty, and so it's extremely crucial to have those habits. And what was your, I'm sorry if I lost track,
No,
I
no, no,
guess.
no, no. You very much on track. The other part was I said I'm very sure that now you have no qualms, about the housing that you had once. So you have everything all set for you now. A managerial post, a lovely house, and all those achievements happening with you. But you also said there would be some fears. So are there still some demons lurking somewhere, in that corner of the mind somewhere?
the- I think that will never really leave you, because but
Okay.
those little fears become
Mhm.
also the fuel.
Mhm.
I say they become my motivation. So when like you start a camaraderie like among us, among podcasters,
Right.
and now we have to kind of move on and have another phase for our podcasting. So I'm like, oh, so I it's not, I will not only miss the people, but it's like, oh no, I won't have a direct someone written that, okay, you got to do this every day.
Mhm.
Someone organized for you. And actually, I just actually realized yesterday that when many people were posting, these are different resources, videos, this and that resources, so many out there. Many, some of them are free to begin and not. Then the good thing is when you are with groups and someone helping you to manage it, like a coach like you, that coach already or that leader have already tested the other things.
Very true.
I've already tested the water. So instead of me researching on 10 types of videos, I will only use one. And
Very
I
true.
don't need to test the other one. So that's like sometimes the little fear that comes. At the same time, my other fear also, it's not even my fear. Sometimes I question myself, Grace, can you not just be contented and just don't do anything anymore? Don't do anything anymore. Just you're happy with your nursing work. So why do you have to go through all the difficulty trying to, you know, be a real good podcaster for people can,
Mhm.
whatever is our intention, which is usually to raise the words that we use for expressing ourselves in podcasting. So I said, why can't you just, and then I don't have an answer for my question, why I'm not just settling down to do nothing. I'll just leave it be. All I know is if it's in my, if it's in our heart and it's in our spirit and it's in our intuition to do such a thing, the answer to the why, I just leave it alone right now. Eventually, just like I look back to all the things that I did, I said, oh, it was preparing me for this phase, for this phase, for this step. So it was all a preparation for whatever your soul is seeking to do. So for me, it's like you're setting right from the beginning, is as if your energy, and you said, if we keep on recognizing that intuition, it's truly remarkable that we get really good at it.
Mhm. Very, very nice. And while I know there's a long list of things that you do in order to keep yourself energized all through the day, eating well, exercising, holistic medicine practice, your own way of mindfulness and keeping peace with yourself. But sometimes when these fears happen, uh, how do you push yourself through these worst times? Is there a single mantra that somebody can maybe uh, look you up for that?
Hmm. I like that. I always like that question.
Oh,
Because I like that, not because I always have a same answer. Um, well, one thing I do is I stay quiet, whether my, if quiet, if the question comes up and I'm in a conversation, I stay quiet first. Or if I'm in a group, but definitely by myself, I have that moment of, you can call it a quiet time, you can call it a meditation, a reflection. But
mhm,
in that moment, I just really see and feel,
mhm,
because you get that best guidance to go through. Now, perhaps some resistance are are reasonable, but in that quiet moment, one will know. One will really know what to do.
Hmm.
You know,
Very.
if you're so busy that, you know, busy physically, busy mentally, the best thing is to really sit down and do nothing. And if your mind is so busy, let it be. But then sooner or later, it will just be there. And that's how I think that, you know, I go through with that resistance. And if one has to do that, so you go through the resistance.
Excellent.
Life is not easy,
Very
and
true.
that but life is so beautiful when you go through the resistance.
Absolutely. And you know, this reminds me one of the meditational practices that I follow, which is clearing your mind of all the thoughts. So in a way, you could what you exactly saying here is, you know, kind of emptying your cup in the head, in the body, physically, spiritually, mentally. You are empty, and you wait for something to arrive. When you give that chance for the providence and the energies to send you that. But yes, you have to rise to that, or maybe if you go by the, you know, so-called wave bands and brain waves, you would realize if you are in that theta mode, it does happen to you. You know, alpha is said to be very creative, and theta is said to give you those you know what you call it, kind of spikes, and that intuition or some creative idea which comes. And yes, some, it can be god sent. uh, at the end of the day, we have named it in so many ways. So that's very nice. There's one more thing which is, you know, which comes to my head. You've been in the nursing profession, and I know you are a very emotional person. So, during the times of stress and during your profession, how, as a nurse, as a caregiver, and as a person who's looking after, you know, very sometimes sick and sometimes very needy, how do you control your emotions? I am very sure there'd be people wanting to know this.
My one habit that I know that if I really wanted to either cry or scream at someone, or, you know, it could be a very demanding person, whether it could be a patient or staff or your
Hmm.
co-worker,
Hmm.
I take a deep breath first.
Wow.
I'm like, I take a deep breath, and just and again, in that moment, just hear if it's something to be heard. Now, if it's something that you have to see, like, if I remember being in a situation, you see, in ICU, you could, I you know, one could come in and it's emergency already. So now I have to just think for myself that I'm a nurse first. So if I come in, and that's actually the one of the worst first few minutes of a nurse, when they come to work and the patient assigned to them is having an emergency. So I could either think that I could have the worst day for the day, or I could have the best day, work hard, but I'm giving the best for that patient. And if I think that, then I can kind of manage how I feel emotionally, especially if I don't want to break down when the rest of my family members of the patient are already very upset. Although it's okay for us also that if at some point we have to shed tears, we have to shed tears. And that's not unusual for a nurse, especially ICU nurse. And what we usually do is, after any crucial, stressful event, then we have certain meetings. And as a holistic nurse, I'll be the first one to call any religious person in the hospital, whether we always have a chaplain, but the chaplain has access to all kinds of religion, um, priests, ministers, nuns. So I tell them that we have a stressful day. Can you please come and see what you can do? And sometimes I tell them we may just need a quiet moment to pray together or to just say whatever we need to say. I will always initiate that, will always call that. And I remember also one story where my patient, while we were in one of the radiology departments where we had, I forget exactly, it's part of the CAT scan department. And my patient had a code or had an emergency and died on that moment. So after that, while we were doing the resuscitation, as a seasoned nurse, you feel the intensity, but you're not crying all over that case at that moment. But after that, the doctor and she was a lady doctor, and she said, Grace, do you want to go out for a walk? So we went out for a walk, and that's when she and I started to cry. So while we were walking outside. So you put yourself in that situation and think first and foremost your responsibility. And then after that, you back off when you have a chance now, and then acknowledge what you felt during that time. And that's always helpful when I have certain situations like that. And even in that, it can that and that can always happen to a nurse, even if I'm no longer at the hospital. And if my family member or one of my friend, if I can tell them what happened, that's helpful. And then if someone could ask me how's your day, that's helpful, because and that's always good to have that outside support intentionally to do something and detach yourself a little bit. Yeah. Thanks for asking that, because if we can't help it, we laugh, we cry, we have a good time, even in ICU. Some people may be turned off. They say, why are they always laughing? Because I remember I always make them laugh. They're in ICU and they're giggling and they're laughing and all that. I said, well, we have to take care of ourselves first and foremost. Then we take care of them, because if not, we'll be burned out. To 20 years in critical care, that's a lot. That's a lot of being in critical care and still come out happy and healthy. I think it's all good. In every experience, you always find something joyful out of that, and it doesn't have the answer doesn't have to come now. And talking about resistance, you just go through it. You may It's okay to have an imagination, a vision of where the outcome, but just don't get attached to any. Don't get attached to any, because something else might be even better than what you're thinking. So yeah, just like, okay, I dream of this, doing this, I put it in writing for the podcasting. This is my goal, this is what I'm going to do. And if I don't get to it, then I don't get to it. Then I'll work harder again so I could pursue it. And I always think that having a support is always good.
Absolutely. And here, I'm trying to read between the lines, and what comes to my mind immediately is you talking about, taking a deep breath again. And if you look at all the spirituality that begins and you think of connecting with your source, it is that breath. And with every breath, actually, if you look at it, you are living a new life. Imagine if you don't breathe, if you miss out on your breath,
You're
it's
dead.
puff, it's gone. So it's very important to, take that deep breath and clear your mind. And like you said, very essential to take an outside support. Speak to somebody who can help you out. Like Grace said, it could be anybody. It could be your family members. It could be a colleague. It could be a peer, and it could be anybody from your own faith and religion. So don't just keep it there, and always, like she said, have joyful moments. It's okay to be overwhelmed also at some times. So yes, I know there must be maybe many people who must have made tremendous impact on you, with this interesting journey that you've had, coming from Philippines to United States and now settling down and making a name for yourself. Is there one name that comes to your mind that you would like to say thank you to or pay your gratitude on this show?
Well, right now, I think I'd like to really thank my sister Patty
Wow.
because she and I are best friends and best sisters,
You're giving me
and
goosebumps.
and it's funny because ever since I came here, it's and I have another sister, but she passed away, and the three of us are were really very very close. But she died a long time ago, so it's only the two of us now. But we always say since it's only two of us now, we really have to make our intentional connection even more tight. But she will always, if she's sick, if she's not doing well, I may not be doing well also. If
Mm.
I'm doing well, so that's one thing that I really learned also being away from home. And that was something that an inganga, and that is a title for an African shaman, said to me that instead of me worrying so much of my family that's so far away and me by myself, if I focus on taking care and doing my best on what I know that could help me, then my family will be okay. And it's like that. So when my sister, if I feel like okay, let me check on her, and then she said she's having this kind of symptom, and I said, oh, I was also having similar difficulty this time. So we always tell each other, you better take care of yourself, and I take care of myself because then
Excellent. So I'm sure, Paddy, you take good care of yourself because your sister's really, sending all that energy to you, and you also are doing it, vice versa. And I'm very sure that we all have that connect. It all happens here. Your thought is actually a vibration, and vibration is energy. So you can always stay connected, and if those vibrations are really strong, then you have this kind of feeling. So I know, Grace, you have had a remarkable journey. You've done so much. You've achieved so much. Is there still something left that you would still want to focus on, besides podcasting? I know.
besides podcasting, because the podcasting is just really the avenue to be connected in a bigger audience, to be connected more. My podcasting now, I realize, become an avenue to meet like-minded people. So always thinking of that
You're
will
meeting
be
it.
my oh yeah. So all I know is I just keep focusing in terms of like doing what can I do more, is just making myself available for people who needs me. who can reach out to me. There's last week there's this young nurse, and she said, and she saw me again in LinkedIn, and
Mhm.
she said, I've been thinking of you, and you really inspired me. And she met me when I was a speaker in a conference in holistic nursing, and that was before health coaching became popular. So she is a health coach now, and she moved on, meaning she had a leap of a profession. She's leading the holistic program in such university hospital. So she's telling me all of this. And now she's creating a big health summit in October. And she said, I want you, Grace, to be part of the summit if you want to. She explained to me. So like I was like, whoa, So see, that's for me. That's one thing I want to do is being always part of a health summit. And in the health summit, it reaches out more and more people. And nowadays, it's like perfect. So that's perhaps one of my professional dream is not just me doing my own webinar or something, but be always with a group. I like when I can be with a group.
Yes, yes, and the synergy lifts you. The power of compounding, takes you places, and it places you in a bandwidth which automatically takes care of your all house. And like you inspired this nurse that you just made a mention of, uh, would you want to share something to the young budding nurses, maybe who coming from different parts of the world, still looking at, you know, the land of opportunities?
Yes.
A word of advice for them or inspiration for them?
In the hospital, I will start with the story because the story is where the
Wow.
best things happen. So in the hospital, I will meet all these young doctors coming from
Hmm.
all different countries, and they're really very intelligent, and they have so much dreams. So I will always have a conversation in them that, what's your dream after you graduate? What are you going to specialize on? And then so I will always tell them and to go for it and go for it. And for some reason, I will always tell them, have your own practice. If you want to do that, just have your own practice. Be your own boss. Hire other people. And then when I meet also those who are the young nurses, and some are even working nurses from other countries who also most I find that most foreign people coming to United States are very educated and very accomplished in their countries. But when they come to United States, they start whatever job they can have. Okay, they can be in housekeeping now. I will always find that they are a banker in Africa or a teacher in Asia, but they're doing housekeeping work. So I always tell them, just continue and study what where and move on. So for the for the nurse, if you want to be what you want to be in nursing, a specialty, I said, yeah, go for it. And then they'll even ask me, you think I could do this first in nursing? Do there different specialties? Then I says, which one do you think? And which one do you think you'll do even if you have problems? So they go for that. And that's one interesting story I have is there's this young nurse working with me in ICU, and then
Hmm.
the managerial position got vacant. So she said, she came to me and she says, Grace, I want to apply for to be a manager. And she's like maybe 10 years younger than me. So I said, do you want to? He said, yeah. But do you think that he's really going to leave? Because there was still, the manager was still there, but we heard she's leaving. So I said, why don't you write your resume now? Why don't you apply now? Just say, if this position gets vacant, I want to apply.
All
And
right.
she did that. and she got it. So all I'm telling for all the young people and all the young nurses and all the young whatever, you have nothing to lose and just go for it. So if you get embarrassed, you get embarrassed. Oh, it will go away. Just because the what you will lose you just risk it and you lose nothing except being embarrassed, or but what you lose is the opportunity to achieve your dream. Okay, so if you
Absolutely.
don't go for that, you lose that.
Absolutely. So it was really lovely having you with us, and I'm very sure there are so many takeaways that people listening to this and watching this would have, right from being hardworking, sincere, honest, and believing, having a great mindset, and at the end of the day, just go for it. Be proactive. There's no harm in being embarrassed. So if people have to contact you for more inspiration and for more elderly sisterly advice, where do you think they can find you? And if they have to do business with you, where they can find you? Although we would share all those links with our listeners and people who are watching this, would you like to share something with them?
I have my website, Grace Asagra,
Great.
ASPRA.com. So that's one. And of course, I'm on the Facebook. As someone said, I'm easy to find. Grace Sunga Asagra.
Yes.
I'm easy to find. And in Instagram, Facebook is where I'm usually there because for some reason that I do, mo- that's kind of user friendly for me, social friendly than the Instagram. But I'm going to keep working on being good in the Instagram. And the Quantum Nurse podcast is in the Apple Podcast now, and the YouTube I'm building on it is the Quantum Nurse Grace Asagra YouTube.
Great,
There's a lot of
great.
ways. So thank you.
Great.
Thank you so
So
much.
that's about it, guys. Hope you like this conversation, and hope me and Grace were able to provide value for your time. And we shall be back with you with yet another interesting and meaningful conversation with yet another interesting guest, yet another episode of Know the Happiness How with Vinko Chow. It's time to say thank you so very much and acknowledging all that Grace has shared with us. I'm very sure uh, all our listeners and viewers will join hands in wishing you all the best in all the endeavors that you do. And it would be lovely to invite you again, maybe for another episode when you have moved a little more ahead from that rabbit hole and bliss. So till then, it was lovely being with you, Grace, and I'm very sure that we would keep, this connect that we have with you, and we'll take it much more forward. Like I said, we all need to have our whys and what's in place and how's will happen for you. So till we meet you all again, it's bye bye from Grace in Central New Jersey, US, and me, Wing Commander Satyendra Chauhan, aka Winko Chow, the Resilient Lifestyle Strategy Coach from Bangalore, India. Please sign off. Have a great week, and we shall see you soon. Bye bye. Take care. Stay safe. Stay happy, and keep smiling.
Thank you very much.